Hello, everyone, and very warm welcome in the literal sense to our EU panel debate on digital skills for digital Europe. In Brussels today, it's more than 30 degrees, so a good day to meet and to discuss. My name is Benjamin Letwon. I am pleased to welcome four very distinguished speakers with us today from the three main EU institutions and also from industry. So very happy to have you on board and to have you with us today. Before we kick off the debate, I would like to ask the audience to post your questions on Slido. And I will try to be living proof that indeed men are capable of multitasking. So we'll see how it works. Yeah, that to maybe as an initial remark, it is well established by now that our societies are in the midst of a major transformation. And one of the big questions we are facing is how do we develop skills for all social and demographic groups to participate in our digital societies. So the Commission has recognized this and opened a public consultation in June on the Digital Education Action Plan, which is now closed. So before we dive into the debate, and in order to set the scene, I would like to ask Director Angelova to share with us insights on the content, on the structure, and the results of the consultation. Of course, as far as possible, the proposal is not out yet, but we are of course very curious to hear from you what we can expect. And Director Angelova is a Director for Innovation, International Cooperation and Sport at DG EAC at the European Commission since 2016. She is responsible for digital education, academic and business cooperation, as well as research, innovation and sport. So we couldn't have had a better speaker today to introduce us to the Digital Education Action Plan. And we are very happy to welcome you here, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm really delighted to participate in today's discussion, and let me send you really very sunny and shiny regards from Brussels. I think that if the coronavirus proved anything, it was actually that we need to work together. We need to leave our own bubbles, and that we have to learn from each other. And indeed, this public health crisis that we face showed how much we need today technology. We need it to work, but also to learn, and also to stay in touch with friends and family. And we knew this before, but now it is recognized by everyone that we all need digital skills in our everyday life. And this was especially evident with schools and universities, campuses closures during the crisis. As we know, in the last few months, learners and education providers everywhere saw learning moving actually online. And we know that this shift happened overnight, really, in a very fast way. And this was necessary due to the crisis, but at the same time, the fact that it was understandably not planned actually meant that there were gaps. And the shift was indeed a great effort, and we have to recognize all the efforts that were made by schools, by universities, by governments in general, in order to respond to the needs and the crisis and the challenges that they pose. But it doesn't change the fact that it was not always the coherent yet flexible way that online and blended learning can offer. And this should be our next goal. So we know from decades of practice and research that high quality, well-organized blended modes can make learning more personalized and engaging. And it can help learners become more autonomous and self-directed. So during this period of disruption, we saw in various cases that prior investment in digital capacity paid off. We saw schools and universities and institutions that had run teacher training programs in digital skills and pedagogies, and that had robust infrastructure and also high quality online resources in place they were better placed to navigate during this extremely challenging situation. And there is a lesson to learn for all of us, namely that technology can be a great enabler of learning, but where it is lacking due to lack of hardware, software, or even digital skills, then technology can become a major barrier. And during the lockdown, many learners without access to infrastructure could not continue their education in full. Their well-being suffered, they could not be in touch with their teachers and with their peers, and understandably, learning gaps grew. So on the Commission side, together with the whole of the education community, we did our best in order to give a first response to the crisis and the challenges that we faced. And we also learned the lessons of the crisis. So you've already mentioned the Digital Education Action Plan. Indeed, the Commission is going to put forward 2 communications by the end of September. The first one will be on the European education area, and the second one is the renewed Digital Education Action Plan. So the 2 communications will take the next steps to guide education in Europe so that it is in line with all the transformations of the world that are happening around us. And these communications will aim at ensuring high quality and inclusive education for the green and digital transformations. And they aim to empower young people, but also adults, so they can pursue personal development, they can find their place in a values-based and cohesive society with the skills to thrive in a fast-changing economy and labor market. So the new Digital Education Action Plan in particular will set a range of new measures to support member states, but also education and training institutions in their efforts to embrace a digital age learning. And as you mentioned, the Commission carried out a public online consultation together with a wide range of outreach events. But let me share with you some of the key findings of this public consultation. So in the public consultation, we received responses from more than 2,700 citizens and organizations who expressed their views and first-hand experience from how digital and online learning during the crisis, but also their views about digital education in the future and the role of technology in education. We saw 95% of the respondents who thought that the shift to digital learning was a point of no return for technology in education. We also saw 60% who considered that their own digital skills have improved during the crisis and that digital skills would be even more in demand in the future for the jobs market. 67% of the parents who responded to the online consultation unfortunately found the measures that have been taken to continue education not satisfactory. But from respondents, we also heard that there are 3 major challenges, in particular inequalities, infrastructure gaps, and a lack of a planned approach for integrating technology. So we added all these findings to what we already knew. And this is namely that learning to use technology creatively, safely, with confidence needs to start from an early age. In schools, children should learn about the digital world the way they learn about the natural world. And I'm glad to know that the member states have risen to this challenge. We see that across Europe, countries are reviewing how they teach digital skills. Many countries have introduced new subjects like computing or added new elements to existing subjects. For example, computational thinking, ethics, artificial intelligence, digital citizenship, or digital well-being. And if I pick up the country most of you are probably best familiar with, Germany, as a result of the COVID crisis, we observe much higher awareness of digital education and its importance as a result of the crisis. So this is not surprising given the studies and reports we received from Germany that point to some of the particular challenges identified during this period with regard to adaptation to digital education. And for example, this refers to teachers' digital skills, the availability of devices and connectivity. And this is why we very much welcome also the fact that the German presidency of the EU put digital education as its top priority in the field of education and training, and plans to reach Council conclusions on this topic by the end of November. Allow me to make a few more points, starting by emphasizing the role of teachers and educators in digital education. First, we need to support our teachers and school leaders who have shown really incredible resilience and made a huge effort during the crisis. Teacher training is crucial, including initial teacher training and education, as well as their continued professional development. So if we are to offer to all our children the chance to learn about the digital world, then teachers need to be confident of what they teach about and how to use technology. Teacher mobility should become a regular feature of teachers' careers. And I mean virtual mobility as well as physical. Take for, excuse me. Take for example, excuse me.
Sorry, let me just, yeah, you're back.
Yes, my voice, I lost my voice. So just to continue with the mobility of teachers, which is really very important. And I wanted to give the example of a well-known e-twinning platform, which offers the opportunities for hundreds of thousands of teachers to cooperate virtually. And it is an excellent tool for getting familiar with online learning and online teamwork. So e-twinning has supported thousands of schools during the school closures of the past months. So we are also considering how to support in the future existing teacher education institutions with a view to provide teachers and students with the learning opportunities on challenging pedagogical matters. So this is, of course, including learning in the digital age. And in the context of the new Digital Education Action Plan, the Commission will support also the development of digital competencies of teachers through an extension of the selfie tool, which you probably know. The selfie tool helps and allows schools to review how they use technology across the board, while the new tool will allow teachers to assess their own digital skills, to actually see where their strengths and weaknesses lie and what they need to further improve them, what kind of training they may need to pursue. A second point I wanted to make, this is the persisting gender gap in the digital sector. In 2017, women accounted only for 54% of all tertiary students in the EU. Yet they're still particularly underrepresented in the digital sector. And therefore more needs to be done in order to engage, to motivate, to inspire them, to have more girls and female students who choose STEM subjects in school and later on in higher education, as well as to go for a career in the digital sector. So concerted efforts of teachers, parents, STEM professionals, and the private sector as a whole are needed to address persisting gender imbalances and make a real change. And I urge those industry partners here today to rise to this challenge and support and inspire girls to learn more about the work you are doing and about the studies and careers that are open to them. I would like to give an example of a concrete initiative where the industry partners can contribute. This is the EU Code Week, which last year reached 4.2 million participants in more than 80 countries from around the world. So the EU Code Week is a great chance for people of all ages, for young and old, to get a first-hand experience using technology in fun and creative way. It brings various stakeholders from the public and private sector together, including the technology sector, and provides also an opportunity to attract girls and women to digital technology and STEM subjects. So join the EU Code Week, which is kicking off on the 10th of October. And I would like to conclude by stressing that high quality and inclusive digital education needs work on many fronts. So we need infrastructure, professional development, good leadership, a culture of collaboration and innovation, new approaches to learner assessment and quality assurance, not neglecting also the well-being of staff and students. So to deliver on all these ambitious goals, there is a clear need for stronger partnership and closer cooperation between public and private institutions in order to use the innovation and potential of companies and civil society. And also the technology sector, its role is becoming even more important. So with the Digital Education Action Plan, we aim to provide more opportunities for dialogue, for exchange, for cooperation with stakeholders at all levels, with a view to deliver on our shared priorities and objectives with regard to the digital education. Thank you very much, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussions of this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director, for this very comprehensive overview. You touched on a lot of points that we want to discuss today, like training, inclusion, better coherence, cooperation, inequality, the gender gap. So a great introduction. I would now like to turn to Niklas Ninas, who is a member of the European Parliament for the Greens. And he is also coordinator for the Greens in the Committee on Regional Development and Cohesion. He is originally from North Rhine-Westphalia, if I'm not mistaken, but lives now in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. So he describes himself as a child of the German unification and a true European. And I'm particularly pleased to welcome you today, Niklas, because you are representing young people in the parliament, not just on digital issues, but we would be very interested to hear from you what are the main topics at the moment from the perspective of the younger generation, and what role does digital policies, digital development play for the younger generation from your point of view?
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for this nice introduction as well. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for inviting me. Thank you very much for that. It's a pleasure to speak on this panel here. And concerning your question, I think that the younger generation, or my generation, is really concerned with one thing at the moment, securing the future that we live in. And that means really tackling these immense crises that we have. Up front is, of course, the climate crisis. That is really stressing a lot of people in my generation all over the globe. And so if we take that to the aspect of education, we also see the demand from various groups to actually include scientific research on climate change, as well as questions of how can we tackle climate change, what can we do in our private life to decrease climate change, but also other environmentalist issues. So to have a educational school field that is called climate education or environmental education. That's really a demand that I've gotten from a lot of different groups, from students and young people alike. Then the other point that we, of course, due to COVID, we looked at more and more at the digital working or educational environment. And to be quite honest, my whole generation grew up with the internet. We are the digital natives. And so we know how to use quite a lot of stuff. However, so I think that the biggest problem was not so much that young people couldn't participate because they didn't know how to, or they didn't have the digital skills to participate, but either they didn't have the technology. The Director General just mentioned it. If the lack of technology, that's a very big issue. That's also an issue of the question if you're rich or poor, if you're living in a family that cannot afford a single computer or tablet or a smartphone for every child, and therefore cannot participate in the digital working environment. And then the other point that was really troublesome was that a lot of schools and teachers didn't know how to use the digital skills. So more on the receiving end, the young generation was really left alone then. So like we know how to use Zoom and Skype and all of this and the internet in general. We just don't have teachers who can use it properly. Or also we have to say, well, it's a tradition that students want to outsmart their teachers, but the digital skills really made it easy for them, to be quite honest here. So what we see coming up to us is a generation that lives in a new world. To be quite honest, obviously the digital era changed so much. The knowledge that we have concerning climate change changed so much that we really should reconsider of how and what we teach in general. Digital skills are right and are useful, but not so much on how to use it and use it as a tool, but rather on being critical, looking deeper into what is going on there. We all know that the internet works. We all know that apps and programs work, but we don't understand yet how they work, or you need to learn something about that, about coding and so on and so forth. I don't want everybody to be able to write a coding language, and probably nobody wants to do that either, because they change so much, but to at least understand that you have an input and an output and how that works, that would be useful stuff. Then there's also culturally digital skills that we should look at. For example, the games that we all grew up with, or my generation grew up with, the video games, should be really looked at. Do they have a cultural value for our society, and could we look at them critically? As you know, movies and theaters are frequently looked at in education, but not so much gaming and digital medias. But then, if we're talking about digital, I think it's important to not stop at the young age. It's not so much the young people that have big problems with the skills in digitalization. It's also older people who didn't grow up with the internet and with this digital era. And I think we need to assure that everybody can participate in this, and that we all learn how to use these tools, but also learn how to be critical and not believe everything that the internet says. That's like the first rule that you learn when you go online. Don't believe anything that the internet says. But we need to make sure that everybody understands how we can fact check and so on. So the digital education is really not a question just for schools, not just for students. It's also a big question for the older generation. It's a big question for teachers, and it's a big question of solidarity within the society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Niklas. I think it's a great point also for Isabella, who I would like to bring in here. Isabella Milewska is a global digital skills leader for AWS. She's chairing the working group at Digital Europe on this issue, and she used to work at different Polish ministries. I know, Isabella, that for your work you focus a lot on digital skills in the labor market. Now, Niklas said it's not always necessarily about the skills, it's all about the access to technology. But I would like to hear from you what your observations are in terms of skills, what role they will play in the future labor market. If you could elaborate on this question.
Of course, and first of all, thank you very much for having me today on the panel, and thank you, Mrs. Angelova and Mr. Ignace, for all your contribution, because I think all of that you said is very valid, and particularly when it comes to continuous education and thinking about exactly how do we use the technology and what for. When it comes to digital skills, from our perspective, we think that digital literacy and basic digital skills is just a default. There's not even a question or a debate any longer. we need to aim for the medium and advanced digital skills. As mentioned just a moment ago, it's not just about using your mobile and being able to browse the internet. It really is about understanding what's beneath the technology and how do you make the most out of it. And one of the examples that I can give that is sort of closest to my heart as I'm working in this field is cloud computing that is proliferating everywhere. And you use it on your mobile, you use it with Zoom, you use it with any communicator. Now, the key here is to be able to understand the technology, how, for instance, cloud works, and see what does it mean for your career as an individual, and what can it do for you when it comes to being a part of greater organization, running your own startup, working in a small e-commerce or a large multinational corporation. So in a nutshell, it's really about turning from being digital users today, which we are since quite a long time, and becoming digital creators. So really knowing what's beneath there and embracing this opportunity. That actually impacts how do we teach today, and as rightly mentioned, not just in K-12 or primary and secondary schools, but what do we do and how do we equip the educators in higher education, as well as in the continuous adult learning? Are those teachers prepared to teach those the most modern, innovative methods and technologies? Are we able to open up to collaborate with private industry enough so that we don't wait full cycle to develop new curriculum, but we foster this public-private partnership so that it flourishes and brings about the technology innovation that we have available today for the students who will leave the university tomorrow and will want to find a relevant job. And on that note, I would agree that with adult learning today, it is not just about graduating from a university or vocational school once and for all. You actually need to stay up to date and learn every single day, regardless what you do, whether you are a student, whether you are working, whether you are trying to change your career. You just need to stay up to date. The technology is changing so fast, and it's such a pace like never before. And so it's not only actually about teaching the technology, but also working towards changing the mindset of Europeans.
Yeah, Isabella, if I can jump in there, because I think it's a great point. Also, the integration of other technologies. I know that you, Luca, working for the Slovenian permanent representation in Brussels, you will have, of course, have the next presidency after Portugal. And you will be looking at education actually as one of your priorities. You're already working on your plans. And one of the important points will be the integration of key technologies into education, for example, AI. So, I mean, we heard a lot of different points from lifelong learning to adaptation of curriculum, of cooperation between member states and so on. Now you have the difficult task to kind of describe a little bit how you will integrate this into your plans, maybe with an emphasis on key technologies like AI. Maybe you can already share your thinking in that direction.
Thank you, Benjamin, for the floor, and good afternoon to everyone from my side as well. I hope you can hear me well. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting us to today's discussion on this topic. I'm very happy to share some of our views regarding it, including with a view, as you've mentioned, to Slovenian presidency in the second half of next year. Let me just start with some basic information. As you might know, presidencies to the EU are set up in trios, and although Germany is currently holding the presidency, as such, we have already been working together with them and Portugal on some joint activities, and one of them relates to digital education. We talked about addressing this topic even before the COVID-19 and the new reality in education, because we've seen the changing environment, the ongoing technological and societal changes with a view to digitalization and AI. So as a trio, and as well during Slovenian presidency next year, we will be working, among other things, on different concrete documents, like Ms. Angelova has mentioned, the Council conclusions, and so on. In this respect, we also plan to address AI. We believe there's a lot of potential behind to address the developments of artificial intelligence for the benefit of education and for education. So there are different strands within how we can, in our opinion, address this. All in all, AI, in our view, can bring more personalized teaching, learning. It can also bring about a new set of skills, needed skills and competences, which are at least medium, if not advanced, and so on. In this respect, we also very much look forward to the revision of the Digital Education Action Plan. Already in the current action plan, there were some aspects of AI as part of the data analysis and then the intelligence behind it for education, and we truly hope that we could further develop this aspect. To also use AI as a foresight tool to what kind of skills are needed for individuals, not only in the labor market, but generally with a view to this changing environment. So we will be carefully looking at what the Digital Education Action Plan will bring. In this respect, maybe I just to mention what we have nationally been already doing, however, with the global effect. Just recently, an international research center on AI under the auspices of UNESCO was established in Slovenia, which will contribute to discussions on applications of AI in and for education, as well as to the research aspects of AI. We truly hope that we could use the concrete activities and also promote this center during our presidency next year. Last point, due to this new reality in education because of COVID-19, we're also aware of the links between using new digital technologies for daily implementation of education. Maybe we will touch upon this later on the influences, consequences of COVID-19 for our education systems, but currently we have different models prepared based on the situation, and models as a basis are crucial when we decide what kind of education we will implement on a daily basis. Will it be a distance learning? Will it be kind of a mixed, blended learning, and so on? So yeah, these are all the aspects that we have in mind.
Luca, you're mentioning the impact of COVID-19, which is of course a huge breaking point at the moment, and one of the major discussions related to that is the EU Recovery Fund. Now, all of the topics that you raised, they will require investment. They will require quite a bit of money. So That would be an interesting point also to hear from you, Director Angelova, what role for education in the EU Recovery Fund, because it's really an unprecedented time. The EU member states, they have agreed to invest quite a lot, 750 billion. I mean, it's still being discussed at the moment, but where do you see education in this? And in an ideal world, where would you like to see the money go with regards to investment in education? Do you have any views on that? We can't, at least I cannot hear you.
All right, I hope
now.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I think that, as you already mentioned, negotiations are still ongoing. I think the major message here should be that we should leverage the EU support with all other sources and funds that are available. What is really important to see is under the new programming period, under the new multi-annual financial framework program, what could be done and what could be achieved through this funding in order to support efforts for infrastructure, for support to education and training systems. I would like simply to mention a few more things, not only linked to the recovery fund, but just to expand more the discussion, because if we look at some of the major challenges during the crisis, we saw that it was the infrastructure gap, access to education, the need for devices. So we have to really look from a wider perspective and see how best to use all possible and available sources and funds. And here there is one thing to be mentioned, is that even before the current crisis, still in February 2020, the Commission has reconfirmed the importance, for example, of gigabit connectivity, and adequate investments at EU national and regional levels are needed to achieve the EU 2025 connectivity objectives. These, of course, include that at the latest by 2025, all schools and other socioeconomic drivers should already benefit from gigabit connectivity with equally fast uploads and download speeds. And in this context, I would like to mention the opportunities that are to be created indeed under the new MFF. Through the various sources, and also through the recovery fund, but also through other sources like the European investment and structural funds. And let me mention with regard to the ERDF that it already invests a lot in education, infrastructure and equipment, and it creates incentives for educational reforms in the member states. So for the next period of time, what remains really important is to make sure that education, training, and lifelong learning remain a priority. And we can only urge member states actually to average your support with the opportunities that are available under the various starts, including the Resilience and Recovery Fund. So here the message is that all these opportunities should be used. Member states should see where exactly their needs and challenges are and how best to use what is available. Thank you.
If I may weigh in here, because I want to be a little bit more pressuring on the member states. I support everything that you just said, Ms. Angelova, but the problem is, I would change one word. The member states should not do that. They must do it. That's why we are actually asking for investments into infrastructure, as well as into the digital infrastructure, as well as into education, which is fixed. So as you mentioned, Benjamin, the RRF, the Recovery and Resilience Fund, it's not the complete 750 billion, but it's only 400 and something billion. So quite a lot of money that the member states can spend on. And we will table an amendment to actually include an earmarking of 10% of that money to be spent on education or educational infrastructure. So if we use 10% of that money, that would be around 40 billion euros. That would be a very massive investment into the future of our European generations and also into the future of the digitalization. Then if you look at the structural funds, for example, the RDF, of course, it can be used to improve infrastructure, and actually it's being done quite a lot, especially in the digital infrastructure. But also there's the question, why do we enable member states to actually use the money as they please when we know where the deficits are in the European Union, and we know that we have problems with the transfer into the digital age because we don't have infrastructure in the gigabit connection. So why don't we just write it down and tell them, please, member states, you need to use at least 10% or 15% from the structural funds that you have to go into infrastructure, and not build, I don't know, some weird train lines that nobody uses, or stadiums that nobody uses, just to please some authoritarian people who are in power and who want to build monuments for themselves. I think we should use the money for the people, and that's why we need to invest it in infrastructure and in education.
I mean, Luca, you won't be surprised that I would like to bring you now into the discussion.
I'd like to reply.
Yeah, so the role of the member states, maybe you can also share with us some insights on how you cooperate in the council, because obviously member states are in charge when it comes to educational policies in many ways. And how do you ensure this higher degree of cooperation amongst each other?
Well, I would first like to say that from the education side, including our ministry, and I believe from ministries of other member states, we can only support what Niklas has just said. However, these negotiations are not difficult only at European level. They're also very difficult at national levels. You have different ministries trying to put forward their projects, arguing which should be then co-financed. Then you have different political and national priorities, and then the reality kicks in. But in general, I can say in response to what the Council has been doing already during Croatian presidency, we've had quite some exchanges on this topic, both in relation to COVID-19 consequences, but also with the view how to fund the recovery of the education system as well, not just the economy. And in this respect, we also adopted some documents called actually our leaders to think about possibilities to fund education and training. I can give an example of Slovenia in the first response by the Commission because of COVID. I believe it was the Corona Response Investment Initiative. It was possible under this initiative to redistribute the cohesion funds. And for example, we managed to put additional funds or redistribute existing ones for further developing digital infrastructure, for digital equipment. We had quite some efforts done in this respect in order to really make it possible for everyone to be able to follow distance learning. This was the main idea, and that's why we put these efforts in that area.
Since we are coming to the closing of our debate, I would like to give the floor to Isabella, because I know that you are working on one approach to solve all these issues about funding, about setting the right priorities, and your approach is partnerships. Can you briefly, because we only have a couple of minutes left, describe the basic idea behind your approach?
Absolutely, and thank you very much for this question. So from industry perspective, obviously, the public-private partnership is absolutely key. But it's not just about sort of inviting the multinational corporations or the small and medium enterprises to come together. It is also to enable them to really help out and how this can be done. First of all, in my opinion, the focus should be on the capacity building and really empowering the teachers to be able to continuously learn and embrace new technology so that they can teach it to the students. And second of all, it is about modernizing the curriculum all across the board. It is not just about sort of keeping the track of what is happening from let's say theoretical perspective, but really embracing the technology innovation that is happening today. So the industry is ready, more than ready, to collaborate with schools, with the universities to develop and co-create such a modernized curriculum. It just needs some simplified frameworks for this collaboration to happen effectively. And this would be my last point: simplification and really removing the administrative burdens. Because if a startup or even a university needs to wait more than 6 or 12 months or even more for a decision to get co-funding, that means that startup or that enterprise is missing a lot of business opportunities, and that university will not be able to implement a modernized curriculum in that particular academic year. In consequence, the students, the graduates, would not be offered with the modernized program that will allow them to get a good job at the end of the day. So that is very practical aspects of what we can do about the EU funds and how we can plan those in order to remove the administrative burden, but also to look at what are the ways to really embrace the wealth of technology innovation coming from the industry, whether this is local or global, it doesn't matter. The sort of the measures should be allowing for that collaboration and partnership to make it to get it done fast and simple.
Yeah, thank you, Isabella. I think we've covered a lot of ground. We have addressed a lot of issues, from the digital education action plan, the adaptation of curricula, lifelong learning, integration of technologies. I think there would be a lot of more topics that we could talk about, and I think we will in the near future. I think on a positive note, we can definitely say that the topic has gained traction. It's a lot of people are talking about it. From a German perspective, it's one of the top priorities at the moment. So and a lot of things are moving. So I would like to thank you, all of you, for your contribution today. I think it was a very valuable contribution to our conference, to the general debate. And yeah, I would again like to thank you. Let's stay in touch, and have a great week, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.